November 22, 1997. Michael Hutchence is found dead in room 524 of the Ritz-Carlton Hotel in Sydney. He's 37 years old. INXS, the band that sold 50 million albums worldwide, that conquered MTV in the 1980s, that made Need You Tonight and Never Tear Us Apart into timeless classics, loses its irreplaceable frontman. The band faces an impossible question. What do we do now? For 3 years, INXS doesn't perform. They mourn. They process. They try to figure out if INXS can exist without Michael Hutchence. Most fans assume the answer is no. How do you replace one of the greatest frontmen in rock history? Then, in 2001, INXS announces they're coming back with a new singer. And in 2005, they take it further. They create a reality TV show called Rockstar INXS, where aspiring singers compete on camera for the chance to become the new voice of INXS. Fans were horrified. Critics were brutal. And what happened next would prove that some things, some people, can never be replaced. This is the story of how INXS tried to continue without Michael Hutchence, the reality show that outraged fans worldwide, and how the attempt to replace an irreplaceable man destroyed the legacy of one of rock's greatest bands. When Michael died in November 1997, the 5 remaining members of INXS, Tim Farriss, Andrew Farriss, John Farriss, Kirk Pengilly, and Gary Beers, were devastated. Michael wasn't just their singer, he was their friend, their brother, the face of the band for 20 years. Tim Farriss, the guitarist, said in a 1998 interview, "We can't even think about performing right now. Michael was INXS. The thought of standing on a stage without him feels wrong." Andrew Farriss, the main songwriter and Michael's closest friend in the band, was even more direct. "INXS died with Michael. I don't know if we can ever be a band again." For 3 years, INXS remained silent. No tours, no new music, no public performances. The band members pursued solo projects, spent time with their families, and tried to process the loss. Fans assumed INXS was finished, and most people thought that was appropriate. Michael Hutchence wasn't just any singer. He was one of the most charismatic, talented, and irreplaceable frontmen in rock history. His swagger, his voice, his stage presence, these weren't things you could audition for. But by 2000, the surviving members started having conversations, not about replacing Michael, that was impossible, but about continuing the music, about honoring the songs, about keeping INXS alive in some form. Kirk Pengilly said, "We started thinking maybe we don't retire INXS. Maybe we find someone to help us perform the songs live. Not replace Michael, nobody could replace Michael, but help us keep the music alive." It was a subtle but important distinction, at least that's what they told themselves. In 2001, INXS made their first attempts to perform without Michael. They brought in different guest singers for various performances, including Terence Trent D'Arby and John Stevens. John Stevens, an Australian rock singer, ended up staying with the band as their touring vocalist from 2002 to 2003. Stevens was talented. He had a good voice. He was respectful of Michael's legacy. But when INXS performed with Stevens, something was missing. Critics noticed. Fans noticed. A review from a 2002 INXS concert with John Stevens read, "The music is there, the band is tight, but without Michael Hutchence's magnetic presence, INXS feels like a tribute band playing their own songs." That stung, because it was true. Stevens himself seemed to understand the impossible position he was in. He said in an interview, "I'm not trying to be Michael Hutchence. I could never be Michael Hutchence. I'm just trying to honor these songs and give fans a chance to hear them live." But by 2003, it was clear the John Stevens arrangement wasn't working long term. INXS needed something different, something bigger, something that would legitimize their decision to continue without Michael. That's when someone had the idea that would change everything, and not in a good way. In 2004, reality television was exploding. American Idol had become a cultural phenomenon. The Apprentice was dominating ratings. Reality competitions were everywhere. Someone, it's never been entirely clear who, suggested that INXS could use reality TV to find their new singer. They could hold auditions on camera, make it a competition, let viewers watch as aspiring rock stars competed for the biggest prize in music, becoming the frontman of INXS. The pitch was made to CBS and Mark Burnett, the producer behind Survivor. Burnett loved it. CBS loved it. They greenlit the show immediately. Rockstar INXS would premiere in the summer of 2005. 15 contestants would compete over 12 weeks. Each week, they would perform INXS songs and other rock classics. The band would eliminate one contestant each week. The winner would become the new lead singer of INXS. When the show was announced in early 2005, the reaction from fans was immediate and brutal. "This is disgusting. Michael isn't even cold in his grave and they're turning his legacy into a game show." INXS has completely lost their minds. You can't replace Michael Hutchence through a reality TV audition. "I've been an INXS fan since 1987. After this announcement, I'm done. This is disrespectful to Michael's memory." Music critics were equally harsh. Rolling Stone called it a cynical cash grab masquerading as tribute. The Guardian wrote, "INXS is about to learn the hard lesson that some things are irreplaceable." But INXS pushed forward. They defended the concept. Andrew Farriss said, "This isn't about replacing Michael. It's about finding someone to help us move forward. Michael would have wanted the music to continue." Tim Farriss added, "We're not trying to find another Michael Hutchence. We're trying to find someone with their own identity who can honor these songs." But to fans, the distinction didn't matter. The optics were terrible. 8 years after Michael's death, INXS was holding American Idol-style auditions for his replacement on television for entertainment. It felt wrong, and it was about to get worse. Rockstar INXS premiered on CBS on July 11, 2005. The format was straightforward. 15 contestants, mostly unknowns, competing to become INXS's new singer. Each week, they performed rock songs on a stage in front of the band and a live audience. INXS would critique their performances, then eliminate one contestant. The contestants included J.D. Fortune, a Canadian singer who had been living in his car before the show; Marty Casey, the frontman of a band called Love Hammers; Mig Asa, a theatrical performer from Australia; Jordis Unga, a rock singer from Oregon; and 11 others, all desperate for their big break. The show was professionally produced. Mark Burnett knew how to make compelling television. The performances were high energy, the eliminations were dramatic, the ratings were decent, not huge, but respectable. But something felt deeply uncomfortable about the whole enterprise. Watching aspiring singers perform Never Tear Us Apart, the song Michael Hutchence had poured his soul into as part of a competition, was jarring. Watching INXS critique contestants on how well they performed songs Michael had made legendary felt disrespectful to his memory. One particularly painful moment came when a contestant performed Elegantly Wasted, one of INXS's final songs with Michael. The contestant's version was technically competent, but emotionally hollow. Tim Farriss had to sit there and critique it like it was a karaoke performance. Fans watching at home were horrified. Social media, still relatively new in 2005, exploded with criticism. Watching strangers butcher Michael's songs on TV is painful. INXS should be ashamed. This is a circus. Every week I watch this show, I'm reminded why Michael was irreplaceable. But the show continued. Week by week, contestants were eliminated. The field narrowed, and eventually, INXS had to choose a winner. On September 20th, 2005, after 12 weeks of competition, INXS announced their choice: J.D. Fortune, the Canadian singer who had been living in his car just months earlier. Fortune was talented, there's no denying that. He had a strong voice, decent stage presence, and genuine appreciation for INXS's music. When he was announced as the winner, he broke down crying. This was his dream come true. But for INXS fans, the moment felt hollow. J.D. Fortune hadn't earned his place through years of building a band, paying dues, creating chemistry with musicians. He'd won a reality show. He was chosen not because he was the perfect fit, but because he was the best option from a pool of 15 TV contestants. The optics were terrible. The new frontman of INXS, one of the biggest rock bands of the 1980s, was the winner of a reality TV competition. And the problems were just beginning. After rockstar INXS ended, J.D. Fortune officially became INXS's lead singer. The band recorded an album with him called Switch, released in November 2005. They embarked on a world tour. Fortune performed all of Michael's songs: Need You Tonight, New Sensation, Never Tear Us Apart, Devil Inside. At first, it seemed like maybe, just maybe, it could work. Fortune had energy. He connected with audiences. The shows were selling reasonably well, but behind the scenes, tensions were growing. Fortune's personality clashed with the band members. He was young, brash, and used to being the center of attention from the TV show. The INXS members were older, more professional, and exhausted by the circus their band had become. By 2007, just 2 years into the partnership, cracks were showing publicly. Fortune gave interviews where he complained about feeling like a hired employee rather than a true band member. INXS responded by saying Fortune was difficult to work with and didn't respect the band's legacy. In February 2009, INXS and J.D. Fortune officially parted ways. The band released a statement: INXS and J.D. Fortune will no longer be working together. Fortune gave a more colorful response in interviews. They never treated me like a real member of the band. I was always the guy who won the TV show. I was always in Michael's shadow. The split was messy. The rockstar INXS experiment had lasted less than 4 years, and INXS was back where they started, without a permanent singer, with a damaged reputation, and fans more alienated than ever. After J.D. Fortune left, INXS was in crisis mode. The reality show had been a disaster. The album with Fortune had underperformed. Public opinion had turned against them. Critics were writing obituaries for the band's legacy. But instead of stopping, INXS kept trying. They brought in a new singer, Kieran Gribben from Northern Ireland, in 2011. Gribben was a solid vocalist and songwriter, but by this point, nobody cared. The damage was done. INXS performed sporadically with Gribben through 2011 and 2012, but the audiences were small, the reviews were mediocre, and the band members themselves seemed exhausted. Finally, in November 2012, 15 years after Michael's death, INXS made an announcement. They were retiring, permanently. The band performed their final concerts in Australia in November 2012. Tim Farriss spoke on stage during one of the final shows. "We've tried to keep INXS alive. We've tried to honor Michael's memory and continue the music. But the truth is, we can never replace Michael Hutchence. We shouldn't have tried." It was an admission of defeat. But more than that, it was an acknowledgement that the entire post-Michael era had been a mistake. Andrew Farriss said in a 2012 interview, "Looking back, we should have retired INXS when Michael died. We should have said, this is it. INXS was Michael, and without Michael, there is no INXS. But we didn't. We tried to continue, and in doing so, I think we damaged our legacy." Kirk Pengilly agreed. "The reality show was a mistake. We thought we were doing the right thing, giving fans a chance to see INXS music performed live again. But we underestimated how much Michael meant to people. He wasn't just our singer. He was INXS, and you can't replace that on a TV show." INXS officially retired in 2012. No more tours, no more new music. The band that had once filled stadiums and dominated MTV was finished. So what did INXS's attempt to replace Michael actually accomplish? Let's look at the legacy. Before rockstar INXS and the replacement singer era, INXS was remembered as one of the great rock bands of the 1980s and early 1990s. They had timeless hits, they had an iconic frontman, they had a legacy that was secure. After the reality show and the failed attempts with replacement singers, INXS's reputation was permanently tarnished. Music historians and critics now include the post-Michael era as a cautionary tale about bands that don't know when to quit. A 2015 retrospective in Rolling Stone put it bluntly: INXS's decision to continue after Michael Hutchence's death, and especially their decision to hold reality TV auditions for his replacement, stands as one of the most misguided choices in rock history. They turned their legacy into a punchline. Younger fans who discovered INXS through streaming services often don't even know about J.D. Fortune or Rockstar INXS. They just know the classic era with Michael. But hardcore fans who lived through the post-Michael years carry a bitterness about how the band's final chapter played out. One longtime fan wrote on a forum in 2013, "I loved INXS from 1987 to 1997. After Michael died, I mourned the band. Then they did that reality show and I felt insulted. They took something sacred and turned it into entertainment. I'll never forgive them for that." The reality show in particular became emblematic of everything wrong with the decision to continue. It reduced the search for a new singer, already a questionable idea, into a televised circus. It made Michael's legacy feel cheap. J.D. Fortune, for his part, seems to have made peace with his role in the story. In a 2018 interview, he said, "I was given an impossible task: follow Michael Hutchence. Nobody could do that. I gave it my best shot, but I was set up to fail from the start. The whole concept was flawed." Fortune is probably right. The concept was flawed, not because Fortune wasn't talented, he was, but because Michael Hutchence wasn't just a voice. He was a presence, a personality, a singular artist who defined INXS as much as the music itself. Could INXS have handled the post-Michael era differently? Absolutely. Some bands, when they lose an irreplaceable member, have the wisdom to stop. When Freddie Mercury died in 1991, Queen essentially retired as a touring and recording band, though they later did occasional performances with guest singers, always explicitly billed as Queen plus singer name. When Nirvana's Kurt Cobain died in 1994, the band immediately disbanded. Dave Grohl and Krista Novoselic never even considered continuing as Nirvana with a new singer. That would have been unthinkable. When Joy Division's Ian Curtis died in 1980, the remaining members formed New Order, a different band with a different name making different music. INXS could have followed any of these models. They could have: Option 1, retired immediately after Michael's death in 1997, preserving their legacy intact. Option 2, formed a new band with a new name, making it clear they weren't trying to replace Michael, but rather continuing as musicians under a different banner. Option 3, performed occasional one-off shows with guest singers, like Queen eventually did, always billing it as INXS with guest, rather than claiming to replace Michael permanently. Option 4, created a tribute or documentary project celebrating Michael and INXS's legacy, then moving on. Instead, they chose the worst possible path, trying to replace Michael directly, first with John Stevens, then through a reality show, then with J.D. Fortune, then with Kieran Gribben, treating Michael as if he were a position to be filled rather than the irreplaceable heart of the band. Tim Farriss admitted as much in a 2017 interview, 20 years after Michael's death. "We made mistakes after Michael died. We should have stopped. We should have said, this is where INXS ends. But we didn't. We thought we could keep the band alive. We were wrong." Today, INXS's legacy is complicated. The classic era, 1977 to 1997, the Michael Hutchence era, remains beloved. Kick is still considered one of the great rock albums of the 1980s. Need You Tonight, Never Tear Us Apart, New Sensation, Devil Inside, these songs are timeless. But the post-Michael era has cast a shadow. When people talk about INXS now, they often mention the reality show as an example of what not to do. They talk about the band's inability to let go, their misguided attempts to replace the irreplaceable. Rockstar INXS occasionally airs in reruns on cable channels. It's a strange artifact, a professionally produced show that documents one of rock history's biggest mistakes. Watching it now, knowing how it all turned out, is uncomfortable. J.D. Fortune has continued performing. He tours occasionally, sometimes performing INXS songs, sometimes his own material. He seems at peace with his brief moment in the spotlight, even if it ended poorly. The INXS band members have pursued various projects. Tim Farriss has done some solo work. Andrew Farriss released a solo album in 2021 and has been open about his regrets regarding the post-Michael era. In 2019, Andrew Farriss gave perhaps his most honest assessment. "We loved Michael. We missed him. We thought we could honor him by continuing INXS, but we were wrong. Michael was INXS. Without him, it was just 5 musicians playing INXS songs. That's not the same thing. It took us 15 years to accept that, but we finally did." There's a broader lesson here about legacy, about knowing when to stop, about respecting what made something special in the first place. Michael Hutchence wasn't special because of his technical vocal ability, though he was a great singer. He was special because of his charisma, his presence, his ability to make every performance feel electric and dangerous and real. That's not something you can audition for. That's not something you can find on a reality show. INXS learned this lesson the hard way, and in the process they tarnished their own legacy. When Michael Hutchence died in room 524 on November 22, 1997, INXS died with him. It just took the band 15 years to admit it. The 5 surviving members tried. They tried John Stevens, they tried a reality show, they tried J.D. Fortune, they tried Kieran Gribben, they tried everything except the one thing they should have done, except that some things can't be replaced. In 2012, they finally stopped trying. They retired INXS permanently. And in doing so, they acknowledged what fans had known all along. Michael Hutchence was irreplaceable. If INXS had stopped in 1997, their legacy would be perfect. A tragic ending, yes, but a preserved legacy. Instead, they spent 15 years proving that Michael couldn't be replaced, while damaging their reputation in the process. It's a cautionary tale for any band that loses an irreplaceable member. Sometimes the bravest thing you can do is know when to stop. If this story moved you, please subscribe and hit that like button. Share this with someone who needs to understand that some things, some people, can never be replaced. What do you think? Should INXS have retired when Michael died? Let us know in the comments. And don't forget to ring that notification bell for more untold stories about the decisions that change legacies forever.